Electric Indigo is a long-standing DJ, producer and composer who started a path into the electronic scene in the early 90s and has since played in over 40 countries around the world. Aside from a long string of releases and gigs under her belt, Electric Indigo is also the founder of Female Pressure, an international support network and online database for female, non-binary, and non-conforming gender artists. Her music and contribution has earned her wide and deep respect from the international music scene that has taken her to play in a long list of well-established clubs, as well as winning awards such as the Outstanding Artist Award Music 2012 and the Kunstpreis Musik 2020 from the Republic of Austria. In this chat, we discover the artist's early entry point into the techno scene as she fortuitously interviewed underground resistance members, her work at an iconic vinyl store Hardwax in Berlin, and her experience running a label and playing throughout 3 decades. We also found out more about Female Pressure and the research project Facts Survey, facts all capitalized, which quantifies gender composition of music festivals and event lineups since 2012. We discuss about the many challenges that non-male, non-white artists might face when working in the music industry, and we leave inspired by Electric Indigo's take on tackling these challenges with open communication and joint commitment with artists, promoters, and music lovers. Enjoy this chat with Electric Indigo. Very good to meet you, and thank you for being with us.
Oh, lovely to be here, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, and we owe a thanks to also Jamaica.
Oh yes, she is such a great person, and yeah, definitely she hooks me up, and that's so sweet of her.
Yeah, she recommended you a couple of times, so we're really pleased that we made it work eventually.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jamaica.
Thank you. Susanne, so let's start with, for people who have never met you before, if someone meets you at a cocktail party or like a dinner party and they ask you, so what do you do? The usual question, how would you answer?
I would say I make electronic music, and I've been a DJ for over 30 years, and that would be about it for a short answer. Yeah.
Short answer. Okay, simple but effective. And so I want to dig deeper a bit on your origins as a DJ. So in 1991, you started in a radio, working for radio for the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, if I'm not mistaken. And you were doing features on a variety of genres. They were not electronic music, they were not techno. You were featuring jazz, funk, hip hop predominantly, until eventually you made a feature on the folks of underground resistance, right?
Yeah. It was slightly different. I think I can't remember when I started to freelance for the Austrian radio. Might have been a bit earlier, like in the very late 80s. But at first I did like several contributions about this and that, sometimes art, sometimes maybe something with sound. But then I got really enthusiastic about electronic music, and I got to know the German techno scene, and through DJ Hell, actually.
Right.
And DJ Hell told me, well, there is this group from Detroit playing in Munich, and you have to see it. So at that time, I actually did not have any money, so I went hitchhiking from Vienna to Munich. Wow. To do an interview, and it was really with all 3 of the founding members, so Mike Banks and Jeff Mills and Robert Hood, and I had them all on tape. But the people in Vienna, like from the radio program, most of them, they were not really happy.
What was the feedback? So you came back with the material before you went online, and then what did they tell you?
Well, the feedback in general was from not everyone, but most of them was, you're too enthusiastic and you don't have the journalistic objectivity.
Interesting.
That was one side, and the other side was techno is music from the past, we've had that, and it's not relevant anymore. And that was in 1991. So slightly misjudging the situation, I would say.
Very interesting. So 1991, it's like, I don't know if you agree, but like I would consider 1991 as being maybe the year that techno started being diffusing or taking steps in Europe with Tresor. Tresor opened that year in March. I think before it was actually, the Belleville Trio, the Underground Resistance from Detroit, but it was, I guess, a few years earlier, not more than that.
Well, I mean, very important was certainly the Summer of Love, especially in the UK. And I can also remember acid house, like in the late 1980s. And I even went to London once and went to an acid house party, and it was quite fun. But I didn't immerse fully in that kind of music back then. It took me a bit longer.
Wow, yeah. So I guess from the perspective of the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, so they looked at techno as something that it was probably spiked for a very short time. For them, it was it's a trend that already went away in 1991. So
yeah, no, I think it's a very particular situation, because that program I worked for is really like a legendary program in Austria. It's called Music Box, and a lot of people all over the country and also from south of Germany were listening to it, and it was the only source of underground music for several decades for young people. Everything else in the program was super mainstream, like chart music and commercial music. But Music Box was really like a kind of a paradise for subcultures and freaky music and underground music. And of course, like all the people who coined this program, they were total enthusiasts. They just did not like electronic repetitive music at all. That was the problem that was underneath, like this weird statement of, it's music from the past.
Interesting. So journalistic objectivity, if I heard that well, is a way of saying what works and what doesn't work, right? So the audience. Okay.
Well, they basically all of a sudden, like everything else on this program was full of enthusiasm, and that made the program so charming too. You know, when you listen to somebody telling you about great music who is not enthusiastic, it has a lot less impact than someone who is like completely blown away, telling you about this new band that they discovered, you know. But in my case, they all of a sudden they regressed to like a more I don't know how to say, high culture approach to journalism, that you have to be objective in order to represent all sides to the story or something.
Right. And is that interview with Mike Banks, Jeff Mills, Robert Hood, is that available somewhere? Like, do you know if it is online?
I have no idea. Maybe in the archives of the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. I recorded it on cassette tape back in the days, and then it was transferred to big reel-to-reel tapes. That's how we cut like radio features.
Wow, even better. Like I would love to message them, email them, ask them for a copy. Maybe we'll think about it. And so you still live in Austria now.
Yes.
Really for a few years.
Yeah.
If you look back at that time compared to now, how much has changed in the scene? Like, as the objectivity faded away, the market more accepting in terms of electronic music?
Oh man, so much has changed over the past 3 decades. I don't even know really where to start, but like the way we find music and we consume music has changed completely. Imagine like when I started to play internationally and do techno DJ sets. I was lucky enough to know about Hardwax record store in Berlin, and I would hitchhike to Berlin to buy new records.
Wow.
Knowing that these records are like very exclusive that I can buy there. So they would not arrive in Vienna, for example, and not even in Munich in south of Germany. Or if they arrive, then it will take them like several months, if not a year. So I had this huge advantage of being able to play records that the other DJs, local DJs, would not have or would not have yet. And this is unthinkable nowadays.
Yeah.
Because the distribution is like this. It works electronically. That's one of the huge differences. The information was, of course, a lot more disclosed. So getting information nowadays online also can be a challenge too, because there's so much information and they have to filter it. But back in the days, it was a lot more work to get to information.
Yeah.
It was a lot harder to reach out to people. You had to be present in a physical space, mostly. So places were even more important than they are nowadays. But the funny thing is the physical space and the physical encountering of people obviously cannot be replaced, not fully, maybe to a certain extent, but never fully. So, and even before internet, there were kind of like central nodes in international networks. And I believe that Hardwax record store, I mentioned it now a second time because it's really important in my life. Hardwax was one of these nodes where people from all sorts of countries would meet, and where you would have these like fruitful encounters and this feeling of you are connected with people from very different backgrounds around, even like almost around the globe. And I think that's a very beautiful feeling that already was there before the internet. So that has not changed that much. Yeah.
It transferred, specifically now it's relevant to the situation we're in now, 2021, after pretty much almost 12 months of lockdown almost everywhere in the world. Talking about this before the interview, that internet allows you to connect with people that would be very hard to actually meet. And Hardwax was probably the center of kind of a magnet for people who are like-minded, who like specifically techno or electronic music, travel long distance, they go there, they meet someone else, and they're like, wow, we understand each other, we are here for the same reason. So it's a beautiful thing. Like, do you, if you've been in Hardwax recently, I guess you've been in Berlin, like before the lockdown, I would be really interested in understanding, like, is the space different than what it was before? Is it in the same place?
In the years I worked at the store, because I did work at the store, we have not mentioned this yet, from 1993 to 1996, it was in a different location. It was a lot smaller than it is now, not far away from its current location, but yeah, a lot smaller, and it felt a lot more, I don't know, like a lot more
cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And was there like some sort of areas where people would connect? Like, I guess there would have been console where people were playing music, or perhaps the people working in the store were playing. Was there a space for people to mingle, dance, or it was purely a record store, small record?
No, almost all the space was taken up by records. So it would have been impossible to have something like a dance floor there. No. Yeah. And people would squeeze in. Like everyone knew that new records came in on Thursdays and Fridays, and it was a day for the DJs to play the gigs in Berlin, and they would go, like everyone would come in the afternoon. So it was packed like this. And then the buyers, for example, DJ Rock, or even myself, because I was buying like all the continental European labels. Mm-hmm. The buyers would unpack like the stuff that came from the distribution, and we would go through the new records and just skip through on the open system, and then like the hands would go up. I want this. And there are like 30 people in the store, 30 people wanting this, and only 3 copies maybe, or 10. And then you had to be lucky or smart to
get your copy.
Yeah. Or you had to wait another week.
Wow. Yeah. Super interesting. Mm. It's certainly like, I imagine, I wasn't there, of course, but I imagine that shaped also a lot of the culture in Berlin around clubbing or playing records in Berlin, or having to, if you're a DJ, you're interested in the music, you probably have to go to Hardwax to get your supply of music. And you need to find your way to conquer the record before the other people.
Yeah, and it was not easy. I think it was like the atmosphere was not very welcoming or friendly. Like everyone working there had this kind of severe look, and you were not allowed to ask the wrong questions.
I think that doesn't change. That didn't change.
Yeah, you must not ask for the wrong kind of music.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you shall be expelled.
I think it didn't change so much. Like I remember first time I went there was 2013, must be 2013, and I remember like it was almost frightening. It wasn't like I was already living in London at that time, where in London the average shop you go there and anybody asks you, hey, how are you? How was your day? What would you like?
Get it.
In Berlin, there's like silence. You feel frightened by asking any question.
But it was a lot more severe, or a lot more tough, like back then. Yeah.
Wow. Incredible.
And I remember people telling me like how afraid they were, like when they saw me in the store, because I used to have like a bald head, and I was always like super serious and playing only this like super hard, fast techno.
Intimidating, like proper.
Yeah, for some people.
Yeah. I guess it raises the bar. So, you know, if the people are really committed to that, they come and ask you anyways, they just go beyond. And I wanted to ask you a few other questions about your path until here. You started a label as well, Indigo.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was, if I'm not mistaken, in 2003. So it was more than 10 years ago now. And how do you...
Almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
18. Wow.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long, right?
Yeah, no, it feels like a different era to me, because it was at the time when it was still like possible to make some money with vinyl, or where you could at least aspire to do that, and where it was normal to have like to press 1,000 copies of a record that would have been like a very small edition. Yeah, but Yeah, it was not really a story of success, I would say. I'm still having, I still have like a lot of the records from the label in my basement, and they are just sitting there unsellable.
Those are records done, released in which years? So was 2010?
From I put out, I think, 5 records between 2003 and 2005, and then another one in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. And it was meant to be like a label for my own music and with some collaborations.
Yeah. And after that, so you had this experience and experiment. So 2007, you print another batch of records. You sell some of them, not all the copies. You don't manage to sell all of them. Do you then say, okay, I want to stop the label because it's consuming too much of my time, too much of my resources? Or what do you think about that at that time? Did you shift your attention to other things, other projects?
Yeah, no, it was just too expensive and did not feel right. I was preferring simply if other people would put up my music, then I had to do that myself. Yeah. Yeah, in particular when I lost my distribution, and because I started with compact distribution, and at some point they called me and said, well, they need to get rid of the stuff that does not fit, and they sent me back like all the backstock, and that's why it's sitting in my basement now still. You know, it's just it does not, it's not fun really, and was doing other things instead.
It becomes a liability. You need to rent a space just to hold a stock of records.
Horrible.
Horrible, yes. And there was another thing that reading through your path and in previous interviews that also captured my attention was that you won an award as an outstanding artist award for music. That was from the Federal Ministry of Education. I'm reading because I want to get it right. And Women Arts Culture Award in Austria. So there were 2 different awards, or that was the same award that you won?
No, it was 2 different awards, both of them quite big, money-wise. And the Outstanding Artist Award is an award in Austria for the arts. So it comes for literature, for fine arts, for film, etc. And you have to apply for it. So in 2012, I think I got it. I applied for the Outstanding Artist Award and I won it, which was really nice for music. Yeah. And the award I got last year is an even bigger one. It's actually the second biggest art award that you can get from the Republic of Austria.
Wow.
But you cannot apply for it. So it came as a complete surprise. I had no idea.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's kind of an award for your lifetime achievements or something like that.
That's great. Congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
In this world, this is for people who don't know, this is the Women Arts and Culture Award, right? So you've been selected as a winner of this award. Yes.
Also, it in the German, it has a German name. It's called Kunstpreis, which means arts award, and it also comes for all different kinds of the arts. So it comes for literature as well. It comes for fine arts, photography, and other genres of art. And yeah, so I got it for music.
Yes, well done. And so I have another question that is very interesting for me, and is about your female pressure. So the platform that you started, I believe it was 1998. So again, some decades ago now. Can you walk us through, first of all, what is female pressure, what it was at the start and what it is now? And rationale, what you're fighting for, what is your ambition with the platform?
Yeah, well, I could easily talk about this for 1 hour straight through, but I try to.
If you want.
Nah, I don't want. Female Pressure is a transnational network and online database for people who work in electronic music and digital arts and club culture. I started it because when I was touring as a DJ and playing, I was asked so many times about other women in this field. So often it was really like sincere interest in the subject. Like people wanted to know if there are any other women who DJ, and if so, what are their names and what do they do, etc. And a lot of other times it was less amusing or less nice or genuine, very annoying comments, like, you're not that bad for a woman. Wow. And like every one of my female colleagues has heard this. Like, anyhow, I thought, well, people obviously have a lack of knowledge about women in this field. And I want to be able to refer to something that, like a source of information that they can access independently from time and space. Yes. So that I don't have to name like as many women who make electronic music at 3 a.m. with like 120 dB around and 3 minutes before I have to start my set.
Yes, you have get a link it now. You have a link.
Yeah.
Educate yourself, document yourself.
And so when I realized there's this need for information because there's too much ignorance around, I started to collect names and contacts, and it quickly became clear that what must have been like in the mid-90s, and it quickly became clear that the internet is the medium of the future on the one hand, but also ideal for this need of accessibility, independent from time and space, or almost, or rather independent from time and space. So I had this idea to have like a online database pretty soon. It took me a couple of years until I could realize it. At first, it was only an HTML list with the names, and back at the time, like a lot of people did not have email addresses yet, let alone websites. So I collected a lot of fax numbers.
That's very interesting.
It's funny how communication has changed, the techniques of communication. Anyhow, out of this idea and of this collection of names and contacts, a lot of stuff grew. For example, the woman who programmed the database that we are still using, Andrea Meyer from Vienna, also suggested that we should start a mailing list. And this mailing list has been a source of inspiration and thought-provoking and learning experience. And also it gave birth to a lot of the special projects that we did over the years. So the mailing list is kind of the center, even though it's so old school, it's the center of our activities. And the whole network and the database over the years grew to now we are like over 2,700 people from 80 countries all over the globe. And
do people reach out to you?
Yes.
Again, just to be clear, this is female, non-binary, transgender artists, right?
Yes.
So it's,
yes.
Okay. And do people reach out to you to be included?
Yes, that's usually how it works best. So people can send an email to info@femalepressure.net.
Yeah.
And this process of signing up by means of a personal contact, I think is really crucial for the whole network, because it makes it very different from social media where it's more anonymous. And here you are talking to people, and that gives, I think, a very different characteristics to the whole project. So people send an email to info@femalepressure.net that they want to become a member of the network. And then it's actually me answering, and I send them like an explanation what female pressure is and a couple of questions. When they answer these questions, they are like, are you a DJ? Are you a producer? Under what name do you perform? What style? Where do you live? Do you have a website link? Do you want your email address on the website? Do you want to subscribe to the mailing list? When they answer these questions, then I create the entry in the database, and then that's about it.
Yeah. And then it's basically a live updated database repository of information about artists.
Exactly.
It's super interesting, and I think I believe it's a hot topic, especially now that we've been talking. I would call it like it's part of inclusion, and for people who are not familiar, who want to educate themselves as well, like, how big is the problem for someone who is an artist who is a female or non-binary or transgender compared to their male colleagues? Can you share maybe, I don't know if you have like an anecdote, an example of something that might happen to, for example, an artist that is not male?
I actually don't think that anecdotes are so constructive in this context, because they are pure anecdotal and they do not represent really the structural problems that we have. But I already mentioned one of the things, when you
comment, like
stupid comments, inappropriate comments, that are just, of course, if you're a very strong person, and I think that is at the core of the problem, when you're a very strong person who is super self-assured and goes through life like a tank, then you don't mind, if somebody says something stupid, because maybe you don't even hear it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a contradiction per se, because if you do artistic work, you need to have sensitivity, and you cannot go through life as a tank without noticing anything unpleasant or pleasant whatsoever. You have to be, your senses are very alert, because otherwise you cannot be an artist, probably. Yeah. So a lot of artists, no matter what gender that I know, are actually very sensitive people and sensible people. So they can be hurt easily.
Yeah.
Also men, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we're human. We're all human. That's the
So I think it just like reduces the creative potential that our society has if you only have super strong people, or strong people like I myself might be, relatively self-assured, to be able to realize their artistic work, and all the ones who maybe have some weaknesses cannot be an artist because they are constantly questioned, and that is what sucks. But that is only one side of the problem. I think the much bigger problem that we are dealing with is actually the intersection when several kinds of discrimination come together, in particular when it comes to race, and so I think every feminist project like Female Pressure definitely is a feminist project, has to always consider intersectional discriminations, and in particular has to do anti-racist work as well.
Yeah.
But that's not, then we also have class and we have ableism, so that it is a wide range. But yeah, I think it's really, and that is why I said the Female Pressure mailing list is a constant source for thoughts and learning processes, is because we sometimes do have discussions there that are mostly in a friendly tone, but from the content, they are not very easygoing, but they are confronting ourselves with our own structural deficits.
Yeah, you have given certainly a lot of thoughts, and you have invested a lot of time in investigating on the problem. I have too many questions, and without trying to go into this and open a huge topic that deserves a lot of attention, but have you thought about what are the structural at society level causes of this that perpetuate racism, sexism, hate in general? Like, do you have like few structural causes, like root causes of this problem? And I know there is going to be a lot of them.
The patriarchal structure of society that we were all we all grew up with, and it's just very like slow and changing, like super slow, and it affects us all. It affects men and women and all the genders in between in the same way. It's quite inhibiting and destructive. But on the other hand, it's a well-established system, and I think it goes hand in hand with capitalist organization of our society. It just works. It's super established, and it works kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
So to break this powerful system is difficult, of course, but it's also super tricky, because we all depend, for example, on money too, because we have to pay some things like the rent or whatever we have to pay. Yeah, it's a big task that we can only solve together, I think, with thoughts, with listening, and with a lot of kindness.
Yeah, very important. And I've looked into Female Pressure. I think you published also, you did some research on, I think is the FACT survey, if I spell it correctly, which researched on gender quotas, on lineups of electronic music events. Like, first question I have is that, is this research that you have invested or done primarily yourself or with your team, or you sourced it from another research entity?
No, it is totally grassroots, and it is kind of like I've been investing a lot of my spare time. But there is like a core team for the fact survey, and that is about 7 people at the moment. And in particular, I want to mention Meg Wilhoit. Death of Codes is her artist name. And she has been the project manager for a couple of years now. And then there is also our statistician, Stephanie Roll from Berlin. So yeah, the workload is split among a few people, but not evenly. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's a super interesting story because we've been doing it since we've been counting acts on electronic music festival lineups since the year 2012. So meanwhile, we are in a position where we can analyze trends over the years, and that's actually relatively positive.
Because the quotas are, let's say, we started with which percentage of, do you include female? You split it? I mean, let's put it this way. What is the split that you are considering? Is male versus female and other genders in between?
No, we actually, when we started the survey, we started in a very chaotic way. So we did not call it study for that reason, because it was unplanned. It just like everybody counted who felt like I want to count, and we did not have like a clear synopsis for the whole project. Yeah. That changed with Stephanie coming on board for the 2017 survey, the statistician, and since then we have like a very clear outline like of the methods, how we work and how we compare things. And since 2020, we introduced the non-binary category as well. So right now we have 4 gender categories. We have female acts, we have male acts, we have non-binary acts, and we have mixed acts. And mixed acts are projects where several people play together.
Right.
That could be like a back-to-back DJ set, or it could be an audio-visual set where one person does the video and the other person does the audio, or it could be bands where people play together.
Of different gender, essentially, to count as mixed.
Exactly. It's a mixed act when these bands are composed of people that have different gender identities.
Yeah.
And so the methodology is laid out very clearly in our publication, so everyone can look it up. Also, a question that arises like super often is like, how can you tell what gender a person is?
Right.
And we are aware that this not only can be fluid, but also that this is one should not make assumption about this, because it's not about how somebody looks. We go through the biographies of the artists that we find online, either on their own profiles on social media or on their booking agencies, and we look at the pronouns that they use for their own profiles. So people who use who refer to themselves with she, her, hers, we categorize as a female artist, and the same goes for he, him as a male, and they, them would go to the non-binary category. Right. This is how we do it. Yeah.
Yes, it's very important, and again, like I don't want to go and spend another hour because we can easily spend a lot of time on this. I appreciate you sharing with me, with us, the insights. There is another question that I have, a follow-up, which is, have you seen any organizations that are doing a good job, in your view, in helping provide, let's say, opportunities or supporting inclusion in electronic music for non-male gender artists?
Oh yeah, there are several, but funnily, the first one that comes to my mind right now is actually CTM Festival. Just because they obviously book like a very, very diverse lineup, and it's really like should be a role model for other festivals in that regard, at least. But there are like a lot of support institutions for women and non-binary and transgender people, and we have a long list in our link section on the femalepressure.net website of institutions.
And we will link it up in the show notes.
That would be great. That would be amazing, because I constantly, like when I hear of other networks and indices and initiatives, I immediately add them to our links, because I think we should not be about exclusivity here, but rather about the more the better.
Yeah. I because it's not a problem that can be solved by any one person alone or organization. It's something that we have to work all together, male included.
Absolutely, of course.
Everybody has to contribute their part, because that's the only way we can change.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And going toward the wrap up, and I'm gonna encourage people, if they have questions, to share them in the comments of the Facebook chat so we can see them in the back end. Our AI assistant called Alessandro.
Yeah, shout out to Alessandro.
Shout out to Alessandro. So I'll ask you another question. Actually, I have, so your Ferrum album came out in a very interesting time, because it was March.
Oh, fuck yeah. Sorry, excuse my French.
No, it's perfect. And I'm sorry to if that is painful, I'm sorry to
Nah, it's not painful.
So March 2020.
Yeah, March 2020. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Funny, Peter Rehberg, originally, I think the release date was planned for 20th of March. And then for some organizational reasons, Peter Rehberg, who is a label boss, changed the release date to Friday the 13th of March 2020, and he asked me if that was a problem for me, and I was like, why should it be a problem? And he was like, maybe you're superstitious, and of course I'm not superstitious. I was like, no, it's not a problem. But maybe I should be superstitious. But it wouldn't have been different if it came out on the 20th of March either. Anyhow, the funny thing was that I stranded in Berlin because there was a release party planned for the album at Trauma Bar in Berlin on the 12th of March. And I came like 2 days earlier to Berlin, I think on the 10th. And that was like when the whole thing kind of changed. Like the release party at Trauma Bar on the 12th was I think it was the first or the second party that was canceled due to COVID in Berlin.
Yeah.
And so I arrived in Berlin and the party was canceled. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And then a day later, like Austria went into lockdown. And then I was sitting in Germany, and the Austrian Minister of Foreign Affairs said, like in TV, said, all Austrians who are abroad, come home. And I was like, should I go home? My Minister of Foreign Affairs is calling me. But then I decided, nah, I think I'll stay in Berlin. And I had packed for 5 days and I ended up staying 6 weeks in Berlin. Which was a good decision because the lockdown in Berlin was a lot easier than in Vienna. But the release party still has not happened. But I was lucky enough that I was able to present the album even as a AV show because I also created visuals for it in October in Austria. So I had 2 shows, one for a very nice festival called Musikprotokoll in Graz with a great ambisonic sound system where I could do like a nice immersive surround sound thing with a nice huge projection, and then also in Vienna at the smaller place for a friend of mine at Grillex. And I feel really lucky that I could perform it at least twice,
Yeah, and that was October 2020.
Yeah. Yes. That
Before
was this short, that was one window open for a few events. Like quite a few of my friends and colleagues had the chance to play in October last year.
Looking back, it feels like it was amazing to have these short couple of months of open air festival with some degree of freedom, some degree of like social distance dancing, or at least listening to music. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I really consider myself lucky because I would have expected that since it came out right at the beginning of this mind-blowing pandemic thing, that everyone would have completely forgotten about it by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But it actually popped up in, I think, 3 the past year's most interesting releases articles. So I thought, wow, I was really surprised because I thought, people would have forgotten it. Yeah.
It was a pleasant surprise. And I know you also did a part 2, so a remix EP with 5 tracks.
Right.
You had Robert Henke, Jamaica Souk. You had, I'm trying to remember, Sorgion, if I believe, yes. Yeah, Pita and Anna Quiroga.
Yeah.
If I pronounce her correctly.
Yeah.
How did you select the remixers? So it came out relatively in a short time, a couple of months after the first.
I think remixing is always like not always, of course, because in the big business, it's just like an economic calculation kind of thing. But in our scene, it is strongly related to friendship and mutual respect. And that's how I chose the remixes. Peter was clear because he runs Edition Smego, and I'm like eternally thankful that he put out the record and that he had Tina Frank make the cover, and we could use like special Pantone colors for the cover, and all this was like never a question. And of course, I really like his music. So that was quite a clear choice. Another very clear choice was Robert Henke, because Robert is my partner. And when he heard Ferrum, he was like, I would love to remix this material. So there he went.
There you go.
And then I thought of Jamaica because I really like her productions a lot, and I wanted to I don't know, to strengthen somehow the bonds between us. And Anna is a similar case, because I've known her when she was still living in Gijón and Spain, and she and her former partner from LCC, they booked me in Gijón as well to perform live, and they were super supportive. And this was just a little a way to
bring them back, the team
bring
together.
them back. Yeah, it's a gestures of friendship and respect, I would say.
Yeah, and collaboration. And by the way, Robert Ecke just messaged and said, I like that you stayed in Berlin for 6 weeks in spring 2020.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That's nice.
Oh.
Do you live together? Like, does Robert live in Berlin or in Austria?
No. He lives in Berlin, and I live in Vienna. And if he sometimes comes to Vienna, and normally I go to Berlin quite often because I'm also often booked in Berlin to play. So that comes in very handy. But these days, of course, not. So we see he comes a bit more to Vienna now. But yeah, we spend a lot of time online as well.
Yeah, I mean, and luckily you had each other. Like you got stuck in Berlin, but at least it was in a good spot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very nice. And we are going toward the wrap up. I'm reading some of the questions. David Huelves Ramos is asking, how long does it take for you to complete a fish an EP? Basically, like, let's say, start to end, from idea to release.
That's a good question. It varies a lot, but I have a very recent, very concrete example, because I was commissioned to write a new piece for a festival that was kind of like moved to online due to COVID, and the festival is more on the academic side of new music. It's organized by my friend Pia Palme, who is a composer but also a researcher, and she does a research project right now, artistic research project about the fragility of sounds, and that is the title of the festival. And she commissioned like a new work, and on this theme, fragility of sounds, which is very inspiring for me. And it was like working in the back of my head for about a year or almost a year. And the actual realization took 3 weeks for 30 minutes of music.
Yeah.
But this is also it's like a listening piece, and I'm a lot faster with listening pieces than with when I try to do techno. It takes me a lot longer, which is absurd. But
Wow.
I should maybe just make one loop and then extend the loop for 7 minutes, and that's it. I can't do that. It's really kind of hard for me. So
listening music takes longer or shorter?
Shorter.
Shorter. Wow.
I'm quicker with listening music. I don't know. It's yeah.
I would have expected the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have expected, like, with listening music, you would spend more time conceptualizing and then putting that into real, like a real piece of music, compared to techno that is quite functional, loopy, tends to be loopy at least.
Yeah, and I'm not very good in creating like functional loops. Definitely not. Even though I love to DJ that.
Wow. Yeah. It's maybe it's an attitude. You have the propensity for creating something that is a bit more evolving and dynamic. Yeah. I have one more question from the audience, and it might be a tricky question actually. we can try. So how can we structure more balanced bookings in festival clubs? Balanced, I believe they mean gender balanced. And does that address the root causes of the challenge? And again, I guess there is two questions on this. We can try to be short. I know it's
yeah. Well, I think it's always it has to be tackled from several sides. So it's not only like the curator has to find the right lineup, but it's also take care that or make it possible for newcomers to learn and collect experiences. It has to do with education, of course, like be inclusive, like from an early age on, create if necessary. And my experience says that it's always necessary, create safer spaces where people from marginalized groups feel safe and can try out things. Another thing is on the very practical side, think about childcare. So if you want to book more women, then also offer some possibilities for childcare, because some of the women might be mothers or might be single, educating mothers. And yeah, so these are just very, very few points. Another very important answer would be have a look at who is actually deciding who plays. So either curator, programmer of a festival, get more people on board whom you can delegate the tasks and make that team, that curational team, more diverse as well. Yeah.
It's very interesting because I just discussed last 7 days with my girlfriend about childcare, which is a very important thing, and I became aware of. Yeah, we don't have children, but we discussed about, we're talking about gender balance in clubs and events, and since it's a night job that takes often to travel, like the downside is that people eventually who have children, then they have a disadvantage compared to people who don't have. And in a patriarchal society, again, women are usually the ones that are tasked with taking care of the children. So it's harder for someone, even if they offered a spots in a lineup and they are female, let's say in this case, it's harder for them to say yes if they have to take care of the children, because that's a setup in their family. So
it's more complicated. Yeah. If
very
not
complicated.
Impossible. Yeah.
Yes. Susanne, I know we could talk about this for hours, but I'll ask you the two last questions that we always ask to any guest, and then we say goodbye. Who is a guest that you think we should really speak with?
I prepared that one.
Okay.
It's definitely DJ Paulette.
DJ Paulette.
Okay. Paulette Constable. She is an absolute legend in the UK scene. She has been DJing, I think, also for over 30 years. And she was resident DJ at the Hacienda.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Manchester? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she's based in Manchester, and I just recently saw a panel where she spoke, and she's just like a super inspiring person.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for the recommendation. We reach out eventually. Thank you. And what is a question that you would like us to ask our next guest without knowing who they're going to be?
I forgot about this one. I'm unprepared in this regard. What was the question that you asked me from another guest?
Yeah, okay, interesting. And I think the question, and I have it here, and now I don't find it. Here we go. What are you doing to keep your mental health imbalance.
You see, you didn't ask me.
No? Yeah, no, exactly. So I was meant to ask you after I got the question from you.
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
Oh, I messed up the plan, the master plan.
It's fine.
Yeah, what is a question? I'm always interested in current favorite gear. So what is your current favorite gear? And that might include software or hardware for music production or for DJing. So I would like to hear that.
Amazing. Production, we will ask that. And on your question from the previous guest, what are you doing to keep your mental health in balance?
Yeah, I sleep. I think sleep is the best for keeping my mental health. So whenever I feel, sometimes the nerves, when you get upset easily, it's usually either hungry or too tired and too exhausted. So there are some easy fixes for that.
Yeah.
Luckily, I think my mental health is relatively stable.
That's great to hear. Being night workers.
Yeah, no, I know it's a privilege.
Yeah. Susanne, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks everyone who had the patience to listen.
Thanks everyone for joining us. And Susanne, if people want to find more about your work, where are the best places to find you, connect with you?
Well, I would say my website, but nowadays nobody goes to websites, even especially since the address of my website is a bit complicated with indigo-inc.at. Nobody can remember that. But I have a link tree since recently, and everything is linked from there. So it's Linktree Electric Indigo, or you go to my Instagram, Electric Indigo Official, and you get access to Linktree there, and you see all the relevant further information from there.
Amazing. And we will link everything in the show notes.
Thank you.
Alongside Female Pressure, the email and the links.
Thank you so much.
Very good to speak with you. Hopefully
lovely to speak with you too. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, guys, this is Joseph, and this is the outro. If you really like the content, I wanted to ask you, please consider liking us on Instagram or leaving a review on the podcast. Whether you're using that on Apple is very useful for us, and your comment makes all of our work worth it. Also, if you have any guests that you really would like us to chat with, let us know. We take any suggestion or any feedback, and we use it to improve and direct what we're going to do next. If you're a producer and you're interested in masterclasses with artists such as Scalameria, VSK, Romek, Lag, and many more, you can now check our website homosound.co.uk. We have plenty of classes and more are coming as well. So brace yourself, you're going to get a lot of content. And one last thing, shout out for Vlad for editing this podcast and Declan for creating the content that you all see on social media. Plus, of course, big thanks to Juliana, Flaminia, Alessandro, and Rick from TapeFeed for all the rest of the work at HoS Sound. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time at HoS Sound.